International experience isn't a gap, it's your superpower. You just haven't figured out how to show it to the Dutch yet. Welcome to Resettle Life and Career in the Netherlands. We are Miriam and Corine, expats, repats, and your career partners. We share real stories, real strategies, and the occasional reminder that Dutch directness is actually a gift. Let's get you unstuck. Hi there! So if you've listened to my previous bit of rambling and were curious enough to listen to a real episode, then welcome and great to have you on board. So in this first real episode, I'm going to talk about why finding a job in the Netherlands is harder than you think. Spoiler alert, it's not because you're not good enough. That's good to start with, right? Because it's what we tend to feel when things don't go our way for a long time. So picture this. It's 11 at night and somewhere in the Netherlands, someone is still on their laptop. Another tab open, another application form, another thank you for your interest, we'll get back to you, or maybe even, sorry, we have so many candidates, we're not going to invite you for an interview. And well, let's be honest, usually it means silence after that, right? Crickets, nothing happens. You've done everything right. You've translated your resume, your CV, you've tailored your cover letter, you apply to a job that matches your experience almost perfectly. And then still crickets. And somewhere around application, 20, 40, 100, a thought might creep into your head that's much harder to shake than the rejection emails you're getting. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just not good enough for this market. So I want to start by saying today that as clearly as I can, that thought is wrong. It's not about you not being good enough. And I don't mean that as a nice thing to say to make you feel better. I mean it because after years of doing this work, of the coaching, we've sat across so many international professionals, brilliant ones with a great resume, with exactly the experience a company says it's looking for. And they all hit the same wall. And it was never about their competence. So if that's you right now, wondering what's wrong with you, nothing is wrong with you. Something else is going on, and that's what this episode, well, actually the whole podcast is about. Because, here's the thing that nobody tells you before you move to the Netherlands for your job, or before you start applying from abroad. The Dutch job market doesn't run purely on qualifications. It runs also on a set of unwritten rules that, nobody explains to you, because those who already know how it works, they don't notice that it's typical for the Dutch market, right? You don't know what you don't know. Only when you get out of your own bubble and go somewhere else is when it hits you that things are different. So for them, it's just how things work. So if you talk, for example, about the hiring itself, a huge number of vacancies are filled before they're ever posted publicly or even afterward then. And it's usually through someone's network, a former colleague, a warm introduction. And if you've just arrived or if you're applying from another country, you don't have that network yet. So you're not just competing with other candidates. You're competing with an entire channel you don't have access to. So that's not your fault. It's just a structural gap. The good news is it has structural solutions. It's a gap that you can bridge. And that's much more useful to focus on than, going the self-doubt route. Although I totally understand. I've been there myself. I am Dutch, lived abroad for 14 years, came back, was trying to get back into corporate life. And today I can say, thank God I didn't, because I love what we're doing with Resettle. But when we first moved back, I tried to get another job, an executive job in marketing, because that's what I was working in before. And even though I'm Dutch, and even though I thought I understood how things worked here, my network was gone. And when I talked to recruiters, they would say, you were an expat wife. Oh, you must have, just been lying by the pool for 10 years. They didn't even look at my CV. They just assumed And I wasn't able to convince them otherwise because I wasn't sure what was happening. So trust me, I've been there. And then we can talk about culture fit. What that means is often incredibly local. It's the way, you fit in a team. But that's very difficult to pinpoint because if you don't know the code and you are not Dutch, right? Or if you are Dutch and listening and you've been abroad for several years, trust me, you're not the same level of Dutch as you were before you left. So you might not quite be what they're looking for. Yeah, okay. So how do you counter that? Well, I'll record another episode only about that because, don't get me started. I've got so many stories to share. And then there's language. You might speak excellent English, maybe even 1, 2, 3 or more other languages fluently. You might even have started on your Dutch or speak reasonable Dutch, solid Dutch even. But fluency in a language isn't the same as fluency in a workplace. More and more we see that companies actually will choose people that do speak Dutch over people that have no clue about Dutch. And for some professions, that makes sense. But for some, you have to be able to translate certain things in a way that the recruiter will see that you are committed to learning Dutch and that little tidbit of knowledge, that skill, is not the reason not to hire you. And knowing the Dutch culture also means a colleague saying, I have some feedback. Well, brace yourself. It might mean something quite blunt is coming. And it might mean you're not used to the very direct way of feedback that is common in our culture. Good to know it's hardly ever meant to be unkind or personal. It's just the way people speak here. Doesn't mean you need to always agree with it or change who you are and become as Dutch as a Dutch. But it's good to have a good understanding of the cultural differences that might occur in the way, well, as I said, feedback is given, the way communication within a team goes, but also the way that your rejection or we don't know what to do with you emails are written. They can be quite blunt too, to be honest. So all of this is something that is not written down anywhere. It's not like there's a rule book you missed. And that's why it feels so personal when it goes wrong. Because if there were a rule book, at least you could blame the rule book. But that silence or the fact that you don't get a seat at the table when you're so clearly good for the job you're applying to, you're slowly absorbing that as evidence about your own worth. And that's not it at all. It's just evidence that you're navigating a system that wasn't built with you in mind, but with the Dutch in mind. So, maybe sit with this a little bit because it's the part a lot of people skip. The fact that you've lived in more than one country, that you've had to figure out how workplaces function without any guidance, that you've had to rebuild a professional identity in an unfamiliar environment. That's skill, that's capability. That is what makes you unique, what makes you able to adapt quickly and to stay motivated when everything familiar has been swapped out from under you. You can't really put that on a job description, but there are ways to communicate that. And you have those skills, which means that the gap may be in your CV. If, like me, you have been abroad with your partner, or you're moving to the Netherlands and you had to give up your career to move here with your partner and family. You have so many skills. You have so much resilience, and that's a superpower. And don't let any recruiter tell you otherwise. Yeah, I need to emphasize that. Don't let people tell you otherwise. It is your superpower. Expats really have added skills. And I wish every company, every recruiter, every employer would finally learn that lesson and see that. So it's what we are passionate about. And it's also what we talk a lot about with our coaches during the coaching we do. So in a nutshell, the problem is not that you're not good enough. The problem is that nobody's shown you how to translate who you are and what you already have into something that a Dutch employer will recognize immediately. It's how to start expanding your network and making connections that will help you open doors that are, as of now, still closed to you. So that's really what this podcast is about. I want to talk about, Corrine will also talk about, why so many talented international professionals get stuck when trying to build a career here. And, why a lot of parts of that are genuinely just solvable. We'll talk in other episodes about why your CV isn't the problem, even though it feels like the obvious place to point finger. We'll talk about networking in the right way. We'll talk about what Dutch recruiters are actually scanning for in those first 8 seconds when they review your application. We'll talk about specific bits of Dutch work culture that might catch you off guard. And also a bit about what happens after the honeymoon phase. Those exciting first few months when everything is an adventure and everything is beautiful and the sun is shining and you're riding your bicycle. What happens after that? Because that's also part of the process of settling or resettling in a new country. So, we'll share our views and insights. And I really hope you will get some inspiration and useful learnings from us. And if this episode resonated with you and you are building your career in the Netherlands, then check the show notes for the latest webinar and program information. We'd love to help you take the next step. We also love just to give you feedback, help, and answers. So find us on LinkedIn, find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and let us know. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let us know what your questions are. And for now, keep listening. Talk soon.